Hello, I'm Kads, and welcome to today's video. So we have once again come to the end of another rotation of the Cursed City, rotation 18 in this case. And once again, we made it extremely far into Soul Cross Hard, but we got stuck on the last two stages. But nonetheless, I still think this is another personal best. So 99 out of 101 on Sintranos Hard, which is, we're getting closer. These are really, really tough stages. We'll come back to these two and what kind of tripped me up in the end. But as we always begin with these videos, I am in the end game, so it is somewhat expected that I can fully complete the entirety of normal mode, as you can see here by the quests fully completed, including Amius. I'll show the Amius teams at the end. And then when it comes to hard mode, I can easily fully complete the lower three areas, so that being Plague Home here, Cobble Market, and Dead Rise. And then I strive to make it as far as possible into Soul Cross Hard as I possibly can. I would say at this point that trying to get a full clear is more so a matter of pride than it is like utility, just because, slowly but surely I will be able to earn my way through the chests and, start to unlock the Carnage Souls. That's the thing I kind of want the most at this point. You can obviously get some potentially other good stuff as well, but I'm just looking for the Carnage Souls. Ideally, at least get the 3-star for the attack and the HP to make him a little bit more tanky. I guess all of these are kind of useful, to be fair. 4-star gives you the crit damage. He's a nuker of sorts. 5-star gives you accuracy, which is useful. Accuracy and resistance, but accuracy is the more useful thing. And then 6-star, I guess, helps you max out whatever blessing you have on him. In my case, I was thinking of Phantom Touch because he does a lot of counterattacks, and so he can get a lot of potential damage that way. But I know a lot of people like to run Lightning Cage because he's typically in Stone Skin, but I digress here. So in terms of my progress in this rotation, let's go through the stages one by one and just talk about or highlight some of the key champions that helped me get the clear. Starting off with stage 1. So we've seen this one many times, but Spirit Attack. And so we have the duo of control between Mashold and Luria. So we have the True Fears and the Freeze. But honestly, more importantly, this is kind of carried by Carnage because you come in there, you block passes, block actives, spread it around, and basically the waves are on lock. It doesn't really matter from there. Decreased defense from Gorlos, and then another nuker here in Rule of the Huntmaster. Unfortunately, there's not a ton of other options, but you can use Nethril if you happen to have him. You can use Lord Shazar, who I used to use before I got Carnage. So there's a decent amount of options, but you kind of have to depend on Luria, I think, is kind of the most important, most accessible champion with the AoE freeze. Stage 2, we've seen this one a bunch of times as well, Force Attack. We have a little bit of CC potential from Fushan, but really it is Alika kind of doing the lockout for the waves, and then Nishak is our primary DPS with the bombs that just kind of destroy all of the waves. And just to buy time in between Nishak's bomb cooldowns, we have War Mana to soften him up with the AoE decreased defense, and then Ziichi is another nuker single target, but still another nuker for the team. So that is the composition for Stage 2. Stage 3, we've got Magic and Attack. So here, Allure's coming in clutch here. We're using her more so for the A2 that you usually turn off in all other forms of content, but she can place the weak version of decreased defense and then put people to sleep if she places it, and so that can be a soft form of CC. You also have the True Fear potential from Danag Soul Reap, who I have on the team. We have our super powered nuker in Siege Hulk here, who more recently I got the 6-star soul for him, so I did not clear this with the 6-star Crushing Rend, but nonetheless now he definitely will smack. Countess Licks unbooked, but she does also have block active skills with a little bit of cooldown reduction for your ally, so that can also be a form of CC. And then good old Hefe here, the nuker for the squad. Stage number 4 is going to be Void Affinity. So this one is definitely carried by Umbral Enchantress and Angar. We have 2-turn provokes potential between the two of them, but as need be, we also have the AoE freeze from Yakarl, and then Hanoraki is kind of cleansing, keeping people alive, and then the AoE decreased speed, most notably from Tuhawk the Wanderer here. But yeah, trifecta of control, a little bit of DPS between Tuhawk and Yakarl for that stage. Stage 5 is the Iron Twins. This one was just kind of a bare bones composition, so kind of like a take on like the Geomancer Aox composition, where the Iron Twins takes a lot of turns, hits us, and extends the poisons that are on him. But of course, he will cleanse those off at certain thresholds. But nonetheless, double poisoners and Python to keep everyone alive to make sure they don't die. So pretty straightforward there. Just kind of tank and poison. Wait for him to die to that. Stage 6 is going to be this one. We have Newt in the mix as one of our DPSs. We have Rockbreaker in their primary control champion with the AoE provoke, notably in a frost set, so if and when they attack him, they have a chance to also freeze themselves, which can take them out for 2 turns. We have Vala in the mix, AoE decrease defense, granted not 100% chance, but it can work, it can be effective enough. And then we have nuker slash stun capabilities from Hoskarul here, and then Valkyrie, pretty much just using her as a shield champion to protect the team. But of course, you can also run Morag in the slot as a tertiary nuker as well as a mini ally attack. Stage number 7 here is going to be force, attack, and supports. And this one is basically centered around War Maiden being our debuffer, Lady Arash being our primary nuker, and then Alika coming in again, being our CC champion with the lockout. I put Doom Priest in the mix because, you know, one, she has a good aura for this, but also just because you can see there's Torments on the last stage, and so she can cleanse off the freezes off everyone, so keep everyone running. And then Rectored Wrath is in there to revive people if and when they die. But with this stage, you do have a lot of flexibility. If you have Errol, you can use him. You have Bistafist, he has block active skills, AoE decrease defense, a little bit of upgrade to War Maiden. Jamarza, if you need a reviver, you don't have Rector. Thylesia can be your debuffer. Mad Hatter can come in there, underrated, but his passive can be very, very annoying as long as the enemies take enough turns. Then he'll start to place True Fears on them, which can be a soft form of CC just in case the enemy waves are faster than you. So lots of options there. Mordecai, HP burn as well. Stage number 23, the first awakening stage here. These are always kind of hard to qualify for, but once you do, they are relatively easy compared to some of the other stages. The hard part is getting enough star ratings on your champions to be able to start them. But this one, pretty straightforward. We were able to sneak Fabian into the mix, which means that the waves are basically GG. They can't do anything. They're locked out. We have Deacon in there to place decreased defense, and then Grush is our main DPS alongside Theodore placing some bombs, and then Siffy is just protecting the squad. So once again, lots of potential options, but it really depends who you have awakened on your account. Stage 8, thankfully not one of the hard stage 8s, but we have a pretty solid team here. We have Ugo being our primary debuffer, slot stroke healer. We have Brogni protecting the team, block debuffs, increase attack, Venomage in there for the poisons, and then Gizmak and Frolny, of course, a couple of mythicals. You probably don't have those, but you know, using them for the burns and the DPS, etc. Without that, it definitely is a lot harder to get through it, but you know, you can slow your roll through with Venomage and just kind of poison the waves, and then you can control them maybe with Cornelia. She has an AoE sleep, although the poisons will wake them up, so that might not work that effectively. However, the sleeps can turn into fears due to her passive, and then you can run, you know, Jereg to kind of protect your team, etc. Claude to put up a shield and healing. So it can be definitely slower without the 2 mythicals that I happen to have, but nonetheless, it is definitely something that is possible to do slowly but surely. Stage 9 is going to be Sand Devil. So this is the fun one where we take advantage of the fact that on her alternate form, Lady Mikage can of course place the sleep on her A1. So it's I think it's 100% chance, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, as long as you do that, you just keep placing the sleep every time he gets a turn, and then you'll never have to worry about the big AoE. I think he gets it off one time, but as long as you place decrease attack after you sleep him the first time, you should be able to survive that hit, and then from then on you can just perma sleep him with Mikage and then do some damage. In this case, I'm running a Ninja, and then ran the Conjurer for when Ninja dies because he's the squishiest, of course, and so he can be killed by the big AoE from the Sand Devil. Stage number 10, we have Void Affinity, so of course use whoever you have. In my case, I do have Skrank and Narcisse as my primary DPS. We have some control here from Solus. We have a little bit of control from Ramontu blocking the passives and potentially blocking actives on champions or enemy combatants who don't have passives. And then I'm actually whipping out the Broadmaw as the support for the team with the revive as needed. But of course, you can also use like Urigram for poisons. You can use Skull Crown for damage as well. Next up, we have stage 11, which is the Nether Spider. This one took a little bit of iteration to get it quite right, and I ended up going with a somewhat unorthodox approach here. But we have Tagore in the mix as our primary healer and reviver. We have Maruka in there for revive on death, a little bit of spot heal cleanse as well, but mainly the revive on death. So if and when we're getting stacked out with poisons and the Nether Spider is about to take a turn, or we know that her turn meter is pretty high, we put out revive on death, she pops poisons, and everyone pops back up. Really effective strategy that ended up working in the end. Oella is in there, primary healer. When we take damage, she can put continuous heals on us, and then she obviously just has her healing in her kit, but also increased resistance. So people you happen to have built with resistance can resist all the poisons, or some of the poisons, I should say. And then Attila, I'm kind of using her in an interesting way where she could steal on her A1, she can steal the counterattacks, and then when the other minions attack her, she can counterattack and potentially steal their counterattacks. So that was kind of fun. But obviously, you can also use, or I also used Kaimar to just strip off the counterattacks and deal with the minions that way. So mix and match between the both of those strategies, but they both kind of worked. But this is the team I ended up settling on for stage 11. Stage number 12, we got to debut Mr. Ishiyama the Immovable. This is one of the main reasons I actually went, well, I was going to go with the fusion regardless, but one of the main reasons I summoned him a couple of weeks ago during CVC and built him up was because I knew he was going to be my DPS for this stage, and he definitely did work. He did the job and it worked out very well. So we paired him, or I paired him with Gamoran here, who's notably unbooked. Ishiyama is also unbooked, I should mention, but a little bit of buffs or buff stealing from Gamoran. You can spread it around for your allies. We have a cleanser here with Spirit Host, a 5-star turn cooldown on that, but nonetheless it can work. Protects you from, some of the stuff that the waves can do. We have our primary reviver in Melga, and then our backup reviver in Kinagashi. So built up those two. Kinagashi, I've had her maxed out for a long time, and honestly, side note here, she has one of my favorite aesthetics in the entire game. One of my favorite epics in the game. Shadowkin is my favorite faction for anyone who is wondering or curious. I think they have the coolest look about them. But yeah, 2 revivers, and then pretty much Ishiyama was the solo DPS for the squad, and then everyone else is supporting around him. So he came in handy, even though he is unbooked. Stage 13 here, different take on this one, but essentially we have Judge in there in a stun set, so kind of a DPS. Gaius is the primary DPS and control there with the AoE sleep, as well as the bombs, which is a good amount of damage. And Korra is the support for the squad, keeping them alive. Half Rack, once again, Nuker, and then Countess Lix, once again, doing her job with the block active skills. But of course, you can also run Allure, as we talked about earlier. You can do the AoE sleep potential thing. You have Foley, you could be a Nuker. You have Poisons from Dark Hail, but more importantly, decrease attack if you're worried about the enemy combatants killing you. And Kaimar, of course, could be used in that wave as well if you happen to have him. We'll come back to S14 later. Stage 16 here, we have another Void Affinity stage. Arbiter, of course, can keep the team running, so most people, at least those of you trying to clear the Cursed City, should have Arbiter by now, so she can definitely keep your team running. And then I'm using a trio of epics as my DPS, so Inquisitor Shemael, Ethlin the Golden, and Gala Long Braids. And Torment is there in case they buff up, then he can freeze them. But he's also built for damage, so he's helping the quad, I don't even know what the term for that is, but the 4th DPS on the squad. And just honorable mention, you can also run Lady Noelle and Sir Nick if you want to run the perma-unkillable composition, so that way you can never die, and you can just slowly brute force your way through the waves while just remaining permanently unkillable. Godseeker and Eerie can work for the stage as well if you happen to not have Lady Noelle as a reviver, but again, Arbiter can kind of do it for the squad. S25, another stage where the awakening kind of determines whether or not you can do it, and this one was a little bit tougher because it is attack and HP, so you have a limited amount of options. And for me, this is the team that I settled on, so somewhat similar. Of course, Rhodos is super powerful, so he kind of carries the squad, but we have a decreased defense from Herndig, and as well as a double AoEs, more bombing from Nishak. We have Husk in there who could potentially control with the AoE stun, and then we have Gaius once again in the mix for the mix of bombs and the sleeps. So basically, once again, whoever I happen to have who fit the restrictions, but it could also do work. If I had to rerun this, now that I happen to have gotten a 6-star soul for Ninja, my last soul summoning video, I'd probably throw him in there for the AoE freeze, and that would definitely make it a lot easier than the previous run. So maybe in the future, I'll be running Ninja instead. Let's jump down to Fire Knight here, Tainted Fyro, S17. We got to make use of Catacomb Counselor, who I famously built for last rotation, and he came in clutch for not this stage, but I think the other Fire Knight stage we'll look at in a second here. But he definitely did some work. It took a few iterations of it to figure out exactly what team that would make this work, and I settled on this one. So we have Morrigan in there, a speed champion, Siffy in there as a speed champion as well, but more importantly, block debuff, so we can block the decreased defense, decreased speed. Ally attack here, of course, from Catacomb Counselor. Rhonda, her passive, very, very useful, and she's, as you can see, she's basically the solo DPS for the squad. Heal reduction also on Morrigan's passive, so whenever we get the shield down, as long as she takes a turn, he cannot heal. And then stack down, of course, decreased speed on the A1, but also decreased defense, decreased attack. For S20, this one pretty darn easy as well if you have Harima, because I had double Mikage, which is kind of fun, so double stuns. Although I think I used this Mikage in Form 2 the whole time, and then I used this Mikage in Form 1 the whole time, because this Mikage is unbooked. So we have the ally attack here, and then we have the CC buff strip version here, but then we also have Uko in the mix, decrease accuracy, block buffs, Python keeping everyone alive, so pretty darn easy with this kind of combination. Lots of fusions here between at least these three. But yeah, if you don't have Harima, you can definitely kind of slow your roll through with Rosin can do some work here. Aox can do some poisons. Broodlord has an AoE stun if you don't have Mikage yet. And Burangiri, I think, also has a stun if you want to use him for that. But yeah, kind of lacking in the DPS department if you don't have Harima, unfortunately. So that might make it tougher for the rest of you out there. Stage number 15. This one definitely took some iteration, and eventually I settled on this team. Unfortunately, I did have to use Nice, but this is just my way of bypassing the whole block revive aspect, or bypassing the HP burn aspect of the Frost Spider. So essentially we cycled through our abilities. We got the boss low enough that Nice could finish it off with his block revive ability. But of course, if you have like a Skrank, high accuracy, or there was someone else here that could work. I think it's Ignatius. Ignatius, if you happen to have him, irresistible HP burns, you don't have to worry about accuracy. So you can definitely use the burn strategy. I just opted to not do that. But the key to success here was honestly Blizzard the Howler, a previous fusion as well, just having him the A1 with the triple hitter and the potential to freeze. But notably here, Faultless Defense. He is unbooked, but nonetheless, he has ally protection and increased defense. And when you have increased defense with Faultless Defense, you can reflect hits into the shield. And so that helped us a lot as far as getting the shield down once we killed the Frost Spider. But White Dryad Nia also helpful in there. She has Miracle Heal on her so that whenever she takes a turn, she heals, she restores destroyed max HP for everyone else. That was kind of the idea there. She's in a regen set to help facilitate that. But also because she has that reset ability on her A2, I believe, that helped us basically start off the fight with Newt kind of getting a back-to-back turn of Blessed Bash, which is really doing a lot of damage to the Frost Spider, making her relatively easy to kill relatively quickly. And then Morag comes in again there for the ally attacks to help us hopefully bring in Newt and Blizzard to freeze the hard mode Fire Knight boss. Moving right along, we got stage 18, which is Spirit Attack and Defense. And essentially, this is kind of just like the earlier stages where we're just whipping out a bunch of Spirit Affinity champions. So we have the True Fear God himself, Mashald, coming back into the mix. But we have the Soft CC from Jingle Hunter. If you happen to line it up right, he can use his A2 and kill someone, and AoE freeze everyone else. And then Fanax, definitely the primary DPS for the squad. Yannicka, Clan Shop champion, coming in as DPS. And then as needed, we had block debuffs and increased defense from Tutorial Reinhardt, another previous fusion. If we needed to, if the enemies were going to get some turns and we wanted to protect ourselves from getting debuffed, slapped or something, poison from like knocked or whatever. So interesting composition there, but definitely carried by the epics and free accessible champions. Although the CC from Mashald is arguably very important, I will note that. Stage 21 here. And yeah, my army of Mishinakis coming in there, at least 2 out of the 3 that I have. Lady Kimmy keeping us ahead of the enemy team. Gizmak again coming in as a DPS, but he doesn't really need to be there necessarily. Ugo debuffer once again. But yeah, this one is definitely tougher once again. I don't know how I would do this if I didn't have Mishinaki, Lady Kimmy, and all that stuff. You can use Hatatsu, which can kind of protect your team. You can use Venomage to poison them. But it's going to be a very, very slow roll without, Mishinakis and other champions to kind of help you deal some damage. Moving to the last couple of stages, let's go here to stage 22. So we have Dragon and Dark Fae. So this team, essentially, we debuff them with Gomlock, Skyhide, a Doom Tower, hard champion you can achieve. Harima comes in and kills all the mirror copies. And then from then on, we're protected from the poisons with Pythion. And then I just threw Aox in there because he has some more poisons. There's not, I don't know, the slot wasn't really good for anyone in particular, but I just wanted to be able to spam the A1, throw some poisons on the dragon whenever he takes some turns. But yeah, that's basically that team. And then Mikage, of course, change her into form 2. She can also be CC for the mirror copies. So definitely kind of easy once you have Mikage, or if you have Mikage on your team. And then S24, the Last Awakening stage. Same rules apply. Whoever you happen to have will work. In this case, we're abusing Fabian once again. Makes it really, really easy to control it. Even the Yumikos can't dodge it because you reduce the cooldown of the Veil, so she becomes targetable. Makes that easy too. But yeah, Deacon Armstrong coming in once again as our debuffer, and Narcisse and Magnar duoing the damage as our HP-based nukers, and then Sify coming again just in case anyone happens to get low and die, but you also have access to Arbiter, which can make it the same or easier depending on who you have on your account. So now let's talk about the 2 stages that I could not complete, S14 and S19. I did give them a pretty decent try on my last stream a couple of days ago, maybe like an hour or so worth of time, but I could definitely see the writing on the wall where neither of them was I really getting any purchase even on the first wave, much less trying to get to the second wave. I don't think either of them even made it to the second wave. But this is the composition I was trying on stage 14, and it had some teeth, but there was so much RNG that I guess is kind of required to beat the stage that I was just not in the mood during like the last week of the Cursed City. I just didn't feel like spending 6 hours trying to get this done like I did last rotation. Don't want to talk about that ever again. But yeah, so Argala coming in the mix, primary debuffer, Atchak coming into the mix to AoE freeze potentially, granted it's a 90% chance. We have Mausoleum Mage, who I did build to try and beat the stage, but he has the cleanse, block debuffs, increased defense, etc., trying to keep the team healed up. Note that we basically don't have a reviver on the squad, which is part of what makes it extremely hard to do, because it's really easy for these squishy epics to die. We have Husk in there, once again, AoE stun potential, and then I tried to run Nizana in a stun set, and it was kind of not really helping all that much. Of course, it's RNG, so duh, but I think you'd be better off running her in a Frost set, just because Wave 1, as we can take a look at here, does feature the infamous double Cupidus with the Venus, so you get counterattacked into oblivion. And so even though she, every time she attacks, she has a chance to stun them, but I think it's a little better to have a Frost set when you're going against this stage, because no matter what you do, you're going to have to hit Cupidus eventually, and so every time they counterattack, you instead have a chance to place freeze on them, which I just think is a lot more effective, because no matter what you do, they're going to hit you at least once or twice, or probably 10 times. And then the other last stage, apparently she's naked right now. I guess I stole the sunset off her. The last stage was, of course, the Taurus and Marichka stage. And I tried. I thought I could really do this, but I gave it many goes, kind of speed tune the team. We got Brock Breaker in once again there for the AoE Provoke to kind of start things off, kick things off with some control. And then I wanted to use Morag to ally attack to try and one-shot the Marichka. Fane was our debuffer alongside Fodbor, who I also built up to try and beat the stage. And we just really didn't have enough firepower. I even tried to, I put my Harima gear on Morag, and she still didn't have enough firepower to drop the enemy Marichka in the one shot with the first ally attack. So I don't know how people do it. Maybe 6-star crushing rend is probably what they have for the whales and krakens of the world to actually do that, and they're just more powerful than the champions I happen to have. But yeah, it wasn't really working. And then of course the Taurus counterattacks would just start dropping people instantly because they're relatively squishy epics. And then even though I had the revive from Melga, it's such a long cooldown that I can only pick up 2 people, and then Taurus will do the AoE and people die, and shit kind of hit the fan. So it just wasn't working out, and again, it just wasn't worth my time to try and find the good perfect RNG run to try and beat this. But maybe in the future might rebuild Fodbor into a stun set and see if that will kind of help. At least the first AoE where he places decreased defense, you might have a chance to stun one of the Tauruses, and that might be a little bit more effective. But we'll see how that plays out in future iterations. And lastly, let's talk about the 2 teams I used to beat Amius on both of the difficulties, starting off with normal mode. So thankfully, this is the rotation where you get to abuse Morrigan in her passive. So as long as she takes a turn, you have irremovable heal reduction on Amius, which makes it very easy. You just kind of surround your team with supports and DPS, and you're good to go. So in this case, I was having some fun. We have Nishak in the mix with the bombs that can turn into poisons, which he can extend. So we basically kept the debuff bar pretty full in the entire fight. And then Rhodos was in there because Rhodos, and I have Sifri as well to pair with the Arbiter to keep the team alive. But pretty straightforward. Again, Morrigan kind of makes this a cakewalk, so to speak, and then just having some supports keep your team alive. And then Rhodos was also kind of cheeky because if I happened to kill him at the wrong time, I could try to A3 with Rhodos, block the revive, so he still dies without changing forms or reviving himself, which is kind of fun. I did manage to pull that off, which is super fun. And then on hard mode, apparently it's the exact same rotation by coincidence, and I use the exact same team. Now, obviously, this is a little bit harder because the boss hits harder and whatnot, but essentially the exact same strategy, more again, heal reduction. I'm not going to re-explain it, but yeah. So once again, the bomb's doing the work. So that's very rare that they happen to correspond, but they are the exact same rotation, or this exact same conditions between normal and hard mode. So the exact same team worked in both situations. Granted, that one took a decent chunk longer in terms of time. So now let's talk about all the champions that I specifically built and or rebuilt for the Cursed City. And this time I do have a pretty decently long list of champions, because as we saw there was a lot of them that were very specific to those last two stages. And so I spent the past week building up a ton of them with the, I think the last champion training tournament or whatever, event or tournament, I forget which exactly ones happened. But starting off, I guess we'll start with the legendary here with Ishiyama, the immovable. So I have him in a Savage set. This is definitely my leftover pieces for an HP based nuker with perception as well, and then one piece of Pharaoh for the extra accuracy. So I did want him to land the fear whenever he could, but again, primarily he was just really there to just do damage to the waves. And you can see there's a lot of 5-star gear, so this is not like my best HP based Savage. This is kind of my budget Savage gear. But yeah, total stats here: 72,000 on the HP, 2,200 on the defense, 216 on the speed, full crit rate 193 on the crit damage, and 323 on the accuracy. So we're focusing on relatively high accuracy and as much crit damage as possible, but again, we're kind of limited by the gear quality there. Once again, mentioned that he is fully unbooked, so we did not book him out, and he did the job well enough. And then he is unmastered because these are Cursed City champions. You're going to see that trend continuing throughout the champions being featured here. Next up, for the freshly built category, we have Mausoleum Mage, who I just basically built him as a high resistance support, high resistance relatively speaking, or relative to PvE content. So he's in 2 pieces of Stone Skin, which is effectively a resistance set, 2 pieces of Immortal, so he's healing himself, and then 2 pieces of Divine Speed, so that he's relatively quick, so he can cycle through his turns. So total stats here: 58,000 on the HP, 2,600 on the defense, 245 on the speed, and then 450, which is the target on the resistance. So that's typically around 450 is enough so that whoever you are, you'll resist whatever the enemies do, unless they happen to have increased accuracy on their team. He is an epic, of course, so he is fully booked, did that last CVC, and once again, no masteries on him. And continuing on with the freshly built, we have Fodbor the Bard, who is built to do some damage. Again, I might rethink that, might rebuild him in a utility stun set, see if that works a little bit better. But for now, he's built a little bit for damage. So 1 piece of Stone Skin is just kind of happenstance, but Divine Speed's kind of the main thing. Just make sure that he's quick enough to go before everyone else or most of the other people. But 5,000 on the attack, 4,400 on the HP, 2K on the defense, 245 on the speed. Full crit rate and some crit damage, nothing crazy there, but 162. And then most importantly, 350 on the accuracy to make sure that we can actually land the decreased defense. But also notably, he does have a stun on the A2, which I tried to use a couple of times, but in the end, it didn't turn out, or didn't work out, I should say. I guess I forgot to mention the blessings, but on him, we have Cruelty, Debuffer. This is my standard approach when they're not 6-starred on the epics. The debuffers put Cruelty on them. They already place decreased defense, so it makes it a little bit more potent. And then once again, no masteries on him. The last of the freshly built with the asterisk here is going to be Nizana. I mentioned that she was in a stun set who I borrowed from someone else, but I took it off of her because, again, it didn't really work. And so we're slowly going to work towards building her in a frost set. Obviously, I can steal one from other people, but like I said, it just didn't feel like it was going to be possible to beat S14 this go, and I just don't feel like putting in the effort to get the God tier run with the RNG to make it work. But maybe a different rotation, I might be a little bit more enticed to go for it. But eventually she's going to be in a frost set, and her stats don't really matter. She's naked. She is booked though, and then once again, no masteries. Now switching gears here, let's talk about the champions that I rebuilt, meaning that they had gear on, but the builds weren't working as I expected, and so I rebuilt them to try and see if I can beat the stages. So starting off with Melgo. So I revamped her entire gear set. Like I said, I did try her out in my Harima's gear, but this is not this gear, obviously. But for the purposes of that Fire Knight Frostbiter stage that we saw, I rebuilt her entirely into damage, but also high resistance. So I didn't want her to get frozen by the spider or get debuffed by the Fire Knight, decreased speed most notably, or decreased defense to reduce her damage, so that no matter what, she can always get off her abilities, notably the ally attack, and just keep the team attacking as much as possible. So HP 48,000, 4K on the defense, 227 on the speed, full crit rate 200% on the crit damage, and then 440 on the resistance, again targeting that 450-ish number to resist whatever the enemy waves or bosses and stuff can do. Another epic, so she is fully booked, 1-star Crushing Rend. I hope eventually we'll pull a 6-star for her, not crossing my fingers on that one, but we'll see. But future proofing, and then no masteries once again, Cursed City champion. Next up, we have Kinagashi, who I built a long time ago. She helped me clear Faction Wars normal Shadowkin for the first time way back in the day, so I used her as the, basically the only reviver in the entire faction to this day. But yeah, she's been in the vault for a very, very long time. But I pulled her out, used her for this stage, and I rebuilt her. So once again, targeting high resistance. She doesn't really place any debuffs, so don't have to worry about that. But divine speed, and then 3 pieces of protection. So we get the speed, the HP, and a little bit of resistance. So that is the target there for these stats. 66,000 on the HP, 3k or 3.4k on the defense, 274 on the speed. So pretty darn fast, faster than I expected, but effectively we do have 2 speed sets on her. And then 473 on the resistance, once again targeting that 450 plus number so that she can resist stuff, and even then her gear's not even fully maxed. For the blessing on her, I went with the commanding presence. There's not much that can really work on her. She's not really healing or anything else aside from the revive, and so just boosting her aura helps a little bit. And then once again, no masteries on her. Melga, I mentioned her. I used to use her, or I did use her way back when, again, for the first clear of Dwarfs normal mode, Faction Wars. And she was actually 5-starred for that, but I 6-starred her for this because, of course, taking a hit from a Tara, she can't do that as a 5-star. You're going to die. So built her in, leftover regen gear. So it's not my not my best pieces, but, it was what was available. And total stats are on her, 77,000 on the HP, 2,300 on the defense, 226 on the speed, and 423 on the resistance. And note, her banner is not maxed out, neither are the gloves, but if the banner was maxed out, it is resistance, and that would push her to the 450 mark that we've talked about before. She is fully booked as an epic. And then no masteries once again. And for the blessing, I went with Nourish because that boosts the healing of her continuous heals, which can just help or try and help keep people alive. In the case of S19, did not really work out. But for the other stage I mentioned her on, I think S12, she did come in handy for that one. And then lastly, we have Fane, who I rebuilt. So I used to have her more optimized for normal mode Faction War stage 21. So I had her in like high-ish resistance, like 350, and then enough accuracy to land her debuffs, 250 around whereabouts. And I built her that way so that, because I think that boss has like fears or provokes or something, and she's my debuffer for that squad. And this is before I got Ragash, because she kind of got replaced. But she was the primary debuffer for that squad, and so the only way I could see to make it work was to make sure that she could, not be subject to debuffs and keep up the debuffs for the team, just to make it a little bit faster to farm. But since that purpose is gone with the advent of hard mode Faction Wars, I took the opportunity to completely rebuild her just as a high accuracy with some damage nuker. So we have 35k on the HP, 5.7k on the attack. We have 243 on the speed, full crit rate, 233 on the crit damage, and then 400 on the accuracy, a little bit overkill. So ideally I'd go a little bit lower accuracy, higher on the damage, but this is just kind of where the build fell out, and the rebuild. So that is where she is, the rebuilt or repurposed Fane. I have a crushing rend on her as well. It's only 2-star, so again, hopefully it becomes 6-star eventually, but not crossing my fingers for that one either. She is booked as an epic. And then I used to use her a long time ago in Demon Lord Clan Boss, and so she does have masteries from way back then. I should probably redo them, but if it costs gems, I'm not going to. But yeah, these are my old Clan Boss mastery. So, offense tree hugging the left hand side, coming down to War Master, and then support tree coming down to Master Hexer to extend the duration of her debuffs, decrease attack, poisons, decrease defense, and weaken. All right, so there you have it. That is going to do it for my progression in this rotation 18 of the Cursed City. Like I've said, we're kind of getting closer and closer to the potential first clear, but I have a feeling that, S19 is definitely always going to be a struggle. S14 is definitely a pain. At least the last 2 that I've actually tried, just this RNG fest trying to get rid of the Cupid Eye, or at least when they keep sending us or setting us up with Force champions into Spirit champions, maybe there's a rotation where it's not Force. I don't think I've seen it just thus far, but I'm hoping that, the other 3 out of the 5 options are not Force Affinity into the double Cupidus, but we'll see. But yeah, I do expect at this point that most of the time I should be getting to the back half of Soul Cross Heart, so that's exciting, but there is still one rotation of S8, I believe, that I still can't beat yet, so still working on that one as well. But yeah, let me know in the comment section down below, how far did you make it in this rotation of the Cursed City? Did you beat it? Are you better than me, or did you get stuck somewhere else along the way? As always, if you did find this video helpful, then be sure to hit that like button down below. It really does help out the channel, and feel free to hit that subscribe button down below as well if you are enjoying the content on the channel for more content just like this one in the future. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.